Okay, so slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form. So yesterday they gave you those equations, y equals something x plus something else. Well, that was slope-intercept form. You just didn't know what it was called. Okay? So those equations they gave us yesterday. And linear relationships can be written in the form y equals mx plus b. That's what we saw yesterday, that equation. And it's called slope-intercept form, yes. When an equation is written in this form, and we kind of talked about this yesterday, m is the slope. Okay, and what is the slope? How do we find that? What does it mean? Do y'all remember how to find the slope? Same thing as unit rate, same thing as constant of proportionality. What is it?
You have to like do the graph, the chart.
It's your change in y over your change in x, okay? So it's your vertical change over your horizontal change is usually a fraction, or when we look at graphs, we can think about it as rise over run. And b in this equation is representing your y-intercept, okay? And so what that means is y-intercept. That means it's your line that they give you, your slope line. That means it's where that line crosses the y-axis. Which one is the y-axis? The one going up and down, right? So B represents y-intercept, which just means where it crosses the y-axis. I always think of intercept like in football, an interception. It's the line that's crossing on top of that. So your slope line is crossing, it's intercepting your y-axis, kind of. Okay? Y-intercept of the line, the y-coordinate of the point at which the line crosses the y-axis. We just talked about that. And the slope is the constant rate of change, unit rate, determines the steepness of a line. So when they give us an equation like they did yesterday, determine the slope and the y-intercept of the linear equation y equals 4x minus 10. So all we're doing is identifying each piece. So y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope, b is y-intercept. So in this equation they gave us, which of those numbers is my slope? 4. That's all we're doing on this. You're just identifying each piece, labeling it. Okay? So then what's the y-intercept?
-10.
-10.
So we don't have to do.
Okay. Number 2, use the slope-intercept form to graph the linear equation y equals 1x plus 3. So it's already on your graph. But if it wasn't already on your graph, an easier way to do it than yesterday, making those big long tables, is start with your y-intercept. That's your b, okay? That's kind of like your starting point. Because if they give you that y-intercept, that means that's your first point on your y-axis. So that's why they put a point there at 3, 0, 3. Okay, then your slope that they give you, which is 1 over 2, that means we're going to rise.
Is that the m?
1, that's your m, yeah. And we're going to run, or horizontal change, 2. And so that's how they got that second point on there.
I thought we were.
From that first point we made, we went up 1, rise 1, run 2. And that's your slope. Okay, down at the bottom part, determine the slope and y-intercept of each linear equation. So literally we're just identifying each piece just to make sure you know the difference. So y equals -5x minus 1. Which of those numbers is your m, or your slope?
5.
-5, good. Remember, m is your slope. If you want to write that down on top, you can, just as a reminder. Apple pen. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean Okay, so if that's my slope, then what is my b, or my y-intercept in that equation? -1.
That's all you do?
That's all we're doing. We're just identifying each piece for this top part. Okay, so then on number 2, it's a little bit weird.
There's no number.
What is my slope going to be? There's x. So there's no number, but remember when we did equations and I said if there's just an x by itself, what can you imagine in front of that x? A 1. So that means my slope's going to be negative 1. Is there anything?
Oh, so it's 0?
0. If there isn't a plus something or minus something, then it's going to be 0. Okay? Number 3. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 8. So what's our slope going to be?
Negative 2/3.
Negative 2/3. And your y-intercept?
That's so hard.
8.
Do we have homework to do?
Yes, but you'll have a lot of time.
Are we needed to do it
Mm-hmm.
after this?
Okay, this one's also kind of funky, so I'm going to fix it for you. We are going to, you guys don't actually have to do this, I don't think, ever this year. It's a little advanced, so all I did was I moved the 4x to the other side.
Why?
That way the equal sign is.
So that way we can have y equal, we can have that format, because we want it to be, golly, sorry. We want it to look like this, y equals mx plus b.
So it's not.
Wait, so it would be still be negative 4?
Not after we move it. Because I'm moving it to that other side, I'm just adding it over there. So now this is the equation I want you to look at. So y equals 4x plus 6. So what's your m or your slope in that equation?
4.
4, that's our slope.
Oh, so this is equal to negative.
Hey, and since, you know, we've talked about how slope should be a fraction because it's your rise over your run, it's your y over your x. How can you turn a whole number like that into a fraction? What do you do to change it? Put a 1 underneath. So when you guys start graphing, like on the back page we're going to do some of, you can see it as 4/1. So you can actually have a rise over your run. Or a y over x, whatever. So you can have a fraction. Okay, and then what's my y-intercept? 6. Okay, on the back, number 5, our equation, we want to use the slope-intercept form or our equation to graph each linear equation. So the equation they gave us, I said the word equation like 5 times, y equals negative 2x, and there is no y-intercept. Okay, so if there's no y-intercept, it's kind of the same as saying plus 0. So like yesterday we made those big tables. Today we're going to do like we did on the front and just do the quicker version of that. So always start with your y-intercept. In this case, it's 0. So your first point, let's put at 0, 0.
So y always goes first?
Always start with the y-intercept because that's kind of like your starting point. You can put your first point there and then go from there using your slope. So that's always your first point on the y-axis just so you have a starting point so then you can use your slope. Okay, so then what's my slope in this equation?
Negative 2.
Okay, it's negative 2. And I want to make it to where I can rise and I can run. So how can I turn that into a fraction? 2/1. Okay? So that first point we made is at 0. Now I'm going to use this slope to do my vertical change and my horizontal change so I can make one more point. So since it's negative 2/1, from that blue point, I'm going to go down 2, because that's my vertical change. And I'm going to go to the right 1 and make a new point.
So if you, you'll always make a 1 underneath it?
If it's a whole number like that. If it's already not a fraction, then you want to put a 1 underneath it.
Wait.
If it's a whole number. And you can make another point from there. Go down 2, -2, over 1, bam.
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 And then once we got our points, once you have at least 3, or I'd say at least 2 points, you can draw a line through it and see your slope.
It is
Negative slope.
Oh, I got that. Oh, just slope. Ouch.
It's a very steep ski slope. Dangerous. Okay, last one, number 6. Y equals -3x plus 1. So what is my y-intercept in that equation?
Oh, 1.
Plus 1. So I'm going to look at my y-axis, the vertical one, and I'm going to plot a point at +1. That's my first point. That's where I'm going to start. Okay, now my slope. What's my slope?
3. -3 over
-3, and I want to make it to a fraction so I can actually plot these points. So I'm going to put -3 over 1. So that's going to be my vertical change. That's going to be my horizontal change. So from that first point we put, that starting point, my y-intercept, I'm going to go, since it says negative, I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go to the right, since it's +1. Make a new point. And just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and do one more. 1, 2, 3. Over 1. That's my idea of fun. Sad.
Isn't that, didn't you?
So just up at the top, you're doing like we did on the notes. You're just identifying the slope, and which is the m, and the y-intercept, which is your b, because your slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Okay? You're just identifying those two pieces. Down at the bottom, you're doing like we did on the graphs. This first one, 9 equals x minus 4, so see it as y equals 1x minus 4, if that helps you. Same thing on this one down here.